When it comes to mental health, depression, and anxiety, I think there are a few things that everyone has the right to know. And I've been teaching this course for several years for doctors, for CEs, to help bring nutrition to the forefront of the conversation around nutrition and depression. Because when I first mentioned this to people years ago, they were so disconnected from this idea that nutrition had anything to do with mental health that I had to bring this in a way that makes perfect sense for so many people. And if I'm going to start at one place, I'm going to start with this short little video sharing a few of the slides from the presentation that I created for this, because in order of importance, if we are looking at depression as a lack of certain neurotransmitters, which is what is assumed by the medication that everybody is taking on these. There's so many people taking what's called a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or a dopamine reuptake inhibitor, or norepinephrine. So if the goal is to keep those neurotransmitters high in the brain, the question that I want to ask everybody, and you to ask yourself, is why is my body not making enough of those in the first place? Or is my body making enough of those in the first place? Is that truly the piece that needs to be supported? More serotonin, more dopamine, more norepinephrine. And if that's the case, here's what I want you all to know. When it comes to our health, there is something called a building block of life. This is the very basic piece that everything in your body is made from, including these neurotransmitters: serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, GABA, all of them. In fact, everything, every enzyme, every structural protein in your body, of which there are nearly 100,000, every functional protein in your body, there are nearly 40,000. All of them are made from these tiny little Legos put together, and they're called amino acids. And these amino acids have three categories, really. There are essential amino acids, and those have to come from an external source, meaning that your body can't just make these out of thin air. It has to get something to come in and actually create these proteins with these blocks. And we have to bring something in to break them down. So think of like an IKEA set of furniture that arrives at your house and all of the pieces. Well, we need to bring that whole box of all these pieces in so that we can build things with them. In order to build anything in your body, you have to have these essential ones, the valines, the tryptophans. And I really want to, just for simplicity's sake, have you focus on just tryptophan for this point, and the methionine. And we're going to talk about one that's called conditionally essential, which in my mind makes it doubly important, called tyrosine. And what makes that conditionally essential is that you have to have it to make certain things. But if you don't have enough of it, if you're not eating enough things that bring that into your body, then you can make it from phenylalanine. And I'm hoping very quickly here to help you understand why that's so important. And here's where we get them from: proteins, right? These are excellent sources of it: red meat, raw nuts and seeds, raw pumpkin seeds, black beans. I often talk about those being super important for so many healthy cultures around the world, so many centenarians and blue zones. But our assumption is that if we just eat these proteins, abracadabra, bam, we get these all of these proteins made. Like we just take one protein and put it to another place. But that's not entirely true. And this is where I think this piece might be so helpful to so many people, is that we have to ensure that we're digesting them. Now, I don't want to lose you all by getting too complicated, but in order for us to do that, there are other things that we have to have. And one of those is an enzyme called pepsin. Pepsin is like what I call the prima donna, because the conditions have to be just right for it to be able to come out and help you take those proteins, that meat, those beans or those nuts and seeds or whatever protein, and break it down into those little building blocks, those Legos, so that we can have the tryptophan and the tyrosine and the phenylalanine. Now, again, I just want to bring up the importance of this. Serotonin cannot be made without the tryptophan, and dopamine cannot be made without the tyrosine. So you can see the absolute essential importance of these pieces in order for us to determine if we have enough of these happy hormones. Now, the interesting thing about this enzyme is it's also made from amino acids. So there's this very interesting cascade of things that you start to understand as to how important these essential amino acids are. And we have to have a perfect alkalinity in our stomach for it to really work. In fact, it has to be very acidic. And now that's a topic for another conversation, but let me just skip a few slides here to get straight to the mental health piece, and I'll come back to those another time. When it comes to making sure that we're getting these building blocks, this tryptophan to make serotonin, this tyrosine to make dopamine, there are many things that can inhibit that, many things that are obstacles to that happening perfectly. And this little list here is a little checklist that you may want to think about. Are you not chewing your food? That may be a piece that's slowing down your ability to get these building blocks, these tryptophans and tyrosines to make your happy hormones and neurotransmitters. Now, drinking too much liquid with the meal, people don't think about that. But back to that pH scale, if we take a substance that is neutral, 7, which is water, and we add it to something that is a 4, and that's where we need to be, 4 and below, to get that pepsin out, to make sure we get those, we make it too alkaline, and that pepsin will not come out. And so we cannot do that. So we have to be mindful of drinking too much liquid with the meals. Now, I don't want to scare anybody to think you can't take a sip of water. You can, but try to keep the majority of your water ingestion away from the meals so that your stomach can stay acidic. Eating genetically modified foods can be an obstacle to that. And stress is probably the most important factor that I want to talk about really quickly here. You have 2 states of being. You can be in fight or flight, which is when you're working or in a hurry or you have too many things to be doing, or you can be in the other state called rest and digest. So again, if you are trying to eat food and then run out the door or be in a hurry, your body is going to be compromised in its ability to digest that food and therefore get that tryptophan and that tyrosine to make your serotonin and dopamine. Bitters are a big piece of how our body is able to support digestion. And if you don't have enough bitters, that can inhibit your body's ability to digest. Having a zinc deficiency, having bacterial infections, and of course, a lot of people take medications that are acid stopping medications, which do stop your body's ability to get those. So I hope what you can see here is there's a lot of reasons why people may not be getting enough protein digested to have the basic building blocks to make the serotonin and the dopamine in the first place. And like I say here, if we don't get those, if the protein does not get broken down completely into these amino acids, we have some problems. So we talk about the depression medications, but let's also talk about other medications that so many people have that can be associated with depression. In fact, Dr. Robert Sapolsky, a MacArthur Genius Grant recipient and author of an excellent book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, he talks about how a big percentage of depression is his thinking is that it's just an undiagnosed hypothyroid. Well, there's a ton of people taking a thyroid medication. And when you look at that, it's just a synthetic form of a hormone called T4. And again, that tyrosine that we just talked about, that conditionally essential amino acid, is a part of that. So we can't make that T4 either without the digestion of the protein and getting that tyrosine. And so that's what that T stands for. We also need that T for the dopamine. Okay, and if somebody's on a medication like a bupropion or Wellbutrin, this inhibits the reuptake of the norepinephrine and dopamine. And in order to make your own, you have to have tyrosine to make the dopamine. So again, you're starting to see this massive need in the body for these essential and conditionally essential amino acids to make so many things: thyroid hormones, neurotransmitters, and hundreds of thousands of other things. So we just can't assume that every day you're getting enough supplies to come in and effectively make enough to keep your brain happy. So this is the piece that we really want to talk about, is whether or not, number one, we are getting enough protein, and number two, and probably even more important, are we actually digesting the proteins that we're getting? Let's talk again about one more medication that it could possibly be related to. The serotonin reuptake inhibitor, again, tryptophan, is that essential amino acid that is going to have to be there if you want to make your own serotonin. So this is just the beginning of a conversation about this, so that we can start to really think about this differently and understand just how powerfully that nutrition can actually be the reason that you are not having sufficient neurotransmitters. And if we're accepting the premise that the only way to help that is to have our body artificially keep serotonin levels high or dopamine levels high, then why don't we instead, more wisely, make sure that our body is getting an ample supply of the precursors to be able to make that neurotransmitter? Now, it's a little more complicated, but we can start here. And this is the most important one. And so my question is, what if? What if all of this depression, or a large portion of it, is just because there's not enough of the basic building blocks to create the serotonins and dopamines in the first place? So we're going to continue to go through a whole series of micronutrients that are incredibly important for the synthesis and conversion of all of these neurotransmitters, so that we can make sure that our body not only gets that to be able to support the ability of our body to make them, but also all of the hundreds upon hundreds of other things that your body needs to be able to heal all of those things that are happening in your body on a daily basis, replacing all 330 billion cells that you replace every day, plus or minus 20 billion, so that you can continue to age at a much slower rate, at a healthier rate, and have everything that your body needs to fully help you to be the best version of yourself and really live a life that is an absolute expression of and full opportunities taken to really enjoy life. Thank you for watching. Any questions anybody has about this, please put them in the comments below. And if there's anything I said that doesn't make sense to you, or doesn't even seem correct to you, please ask me. And I am not above being corrected on any portion of this. I just want to start asking better questions to get people to understand that there's hope. And there are a lot of other things we can do to achieve healthier states of our mental state. And there's so much more we can do. But I want to make sure that this information is being received in the best possible way for those of you who need this. And if there's anything you have a question about, or anything you think I'm wrong about, please correct me. Please tell me. I know what I'm saying, but I'm not certain what everybody's hearing. And that's really important to me, is to know what you're hearing. Thank you for watching. I hope this is helpful, and there'll be a lot more of these to come in a whole series, and all of them are meant to be here to help you to have better knowledge of yourself and to be able to take control of your health. Have a great day.